Hey everyone, I'm going to try these mics this week to see if we get some better audio. But welcome, I'm Kari Northey. I'm a funeral director and embalmer, and weekly I go live to answer your questions and take on whatever you want to throw at me when it comes to funeral directing and embalming. If you have questions for me about me, I'll answer some of those as well. So drop them in the side and ask away. Good morning, everyone. So I do have some questions that were submitted by a viewer. The first thing that she wanted to know is, do I do any type of needle crafts like sewing or needlepoint? And if not, what would you like to learn to do when your kids are older and I have more time? My girls enjoyed crafts and they don't have time for them right now, but one day they will. I always wanted to be a knitter. I always thought I'm going to knit something. So I'm sure I probably had like 20 little, things that were about this long sitting around that I had knitted. They never went far. I never really got into it. It wasn't something I had the patience for, let's say. I am one that likes immediate gratification when I'm doing something, like vacuuming. You can see the results instantly. Jigsaw puzzles take too long. So I'm somebody who likes a shorter time frame on the activity that we're doing to get to that kind of end painting or whatever it is you might be creating. The first question is, several years ago, a friend committed suicide by shooting herself in the head with a .38. From what I hear, she had no face left. How do you embalm in a situation like that where nothing can be closed to contain fluids? So what we find often is with accidents and suicides and things, to the person who finds the person, it's always much worse in their mind, their condition, than it might actually be. They're typically often covered by blood and other elements. And so once the person is cleaned up, we really can look at what we are working with. It's not often as bad as it's often presented to us. We may get somebody who's in an accident or something, and the medical examiners say, oh, they're never going to be viewable. When in fact, they're super viewable. They just needed to have a little cleanup and a little kind of put back together. So if there truly is no face, like literally no face, they're not going to be doing a viewing, but you can still do preservation and show the hands and let the family spend time with the person's body. But you just would inject like normal, and the fluid goes where the fluid can still go, and then you treat the other areas to preserve. So just because maybe it's open doesn't mean that the fluid's not contained within the veins and the structures that are still maybe in place. What do they use when you donate your eyes? Steph, do you mean like putting back in place of that in the orbit? Second question is about a girl my kids went to school with. She died outside in the South in August after huffing air duster and laid there for 5 days until she was found. And she was very close to a very busy parking lot. She just was never seen. She was 21 and a larger girl, and it rained every day that year, but it was sunny and hot the rest of the day. My question is, how bad would the decomposition be in a case like that? It would be bad. Between the heat and the moisture and exposure to the elements, she would have been in a very far along stage of decomposition. Exactly where she was at, it's hard to tell, but she would have been in a very bad state at that point. Yeah, so what do they put in place of the eyes? Typically cotton. What I will do is dry out the eye socket as best I can and use some type of a phenol cauterant type of agent. And then I will pack the eye socket with cotton or web roll, it's like a cotton that's hammered out into a roll like a paper would be. So it's thin, and that when you wad that up, it gives a more solid but bulk to it, but it's also absorbent. But I'll fill that, and then once I get out to a certain depth, then I will use an eye cap to get the curvature right. And I may use 2 or 3 eye caps on top of each other, but that's what I'll do. I just fill with cotton or the web roll. The third question is, when my mother-in-law died at the viewing, her mouth was pulled down to one side as if she had a tube there lying for months, but that wasn't the case. She had been intubated for a week, but they took her off life support. What would cause that? And if she had a tube for a long time, wouldn't they be able to form her mouth correctly? She died of pneumonia and had all of her teeth. So when you're questioning if the quality's gone down, if they use a central embalming location. So here's the thing. We can definitely tell if someone's been on oxygen, you get the lines in the face, or if somebody has been on any kind of a tube hanging out of their mouth, even for a few days, it can fix that tissue where we can't move it back up. We're working against gravity in that type of a situation. That tissue of that mouth has been pulled off to the side and down, even for a day or two, makes a huge difference for us to be able to get it back into place. And to us, how do we know exactly where it was before? The person could have always had always hung lower on one side than the other. I kind of talk off to one side of my mouth when I talk. That's just how I am. So, we're not symmetrical. So for us to know exactly how somebody looked, we don't know. And we do get some droops, but the person could have had a stroke. They could have had people call droopsy, where one side of their face has been kind of paralyzed for a while. So there's all sorts of different ailments that can cause different ways for face to lay, but we don't know what normal was typically when we're doing preparation. If we get a photo, the photo is often 5 to 10 years old that we're trying to make the person look like. But if the tissue has been set into a different place, it's hard for us to get it into another place. We can't always restore to 10 years younger or 5 years younger. So we only can work with what we're given. And sometimes the tissue has been pressed or in a certain position that we can't correct it always. And yes, it may be an embalmer didn't do the best job they could, or maybe they didn't know how to do a better job. It's unfortunately, some of these situations are only hearsay because I can't, tell. I don't know what they had to work with to start. So maybe it was better, but it wasn't up to your expectations. So it's kind of a slippery slope there. Hey, David. Hey, guys, everybody. Are miscarried babies embalmed? So, Salome, it depends on the age of the baby, the gestation. A lot of people, if they do burial, they don't want to see the baby later, and we often just put them in the casket and bury them. There's no preservation done. If the baby is more closer to full term, then we will definitely try to embalm if they're going to be doing a viewing. But just like anybody else, we will only embalm if the family wants us to and if there's a need to. So if there's a public viewing or something like that. So there's not always a need to do embalming, even on a miscarried child, but we definitely can. It's typically a topical embalming. If the baby is, early in the gestation, we would just basically float or soak the baby in the fluid so that it would soak into the tissue, that fluid would soak into the tissue of the baby. So the embalming doesn't look like the typical, but embalming is preservation. It's not just the act of injecting or aspirating, it's the act of preservation. Kind of that's the end goal of what we're doing. Friend's grandmother is dying. He works full-time and has 2 kids, is trying to get information on pricing. I'm finding they do not want to give info over the phone. People don't always, they want to get you in front of them. But the FTC regulates that you can walk into any funeral home and say, I want a price list, and walk out. You don't have to give them any information. And over the phone, they do need to try to quote you prices when you ask for them. So you are, able to get that pricing. Tell them to drop a price list in the mail. Ask him if they can email it to him, so that way he can get it quicker and have those prices to look at. If you're just looking for the cheapest price, then, they should be able to quote you that price. It just depends on what you're calling around for and what exactly you're wanting in the end. But if you get into, well, there's all these different caskets and there's all these different this, when it's a burial type situation, there's too many variables to quote you a price. Truly, that's a finite price that's going to match up to what somebody else is really going to quote you, because they could quote you something with a 20 gauge non-sealer casket, and this person could quote you with a 18 gauge sealer casket, and those are going to be 2 very widespread pricing margins. And so it depends what you're calling and asking for in terms of price. Direct cremation, basic simple cremation is the one thing that most people shop out price-wise. So that is a quick, easy answer that a funeral home should be able to give you. However, when you quote that direct cremation, make sure if it's all-encompassing or if that's just their basic charges. Because typically you have a basic cremation charge on your price list. But then to that, you may need to add the casket or vessel that the person is taken to the crematory in. Even if it's a cardboard box, that is also getting added to it with tax. Then you have a crematory charge on top of that, typically, if the crematory is not within the funeral home. So they may quote you, just throwing numbers, $2,000, but then once you go and you sit down and you talk, it's actually like $3,200 out the door, because you have all these other items that need to be added in just to facilitate a basic cremation. And if you want death certificates, if you want to run an obituary, if you want an urn, maybe the medical examiner charges to sign paperwork, which is becoming more and more common. That also has a fee to it. So all those things add into your final price. So make sure you're asking not just the base price, but what a final price at the end of completion, what that number is going to look like. So you have a better idea, because what happens with some places is they get you in the door with that base price, and then by the end, you're spending so much more for all these other little fees that you didn't realize were there. And so then you feel taken advantage of, even though it's all right on the price list. You just didn't understand, because you don't know what you don't know. If you've never gone through the process, you don't realize there may be a charge to view them before cremation. There may be a charge for the cardboard box that's not included. So make sure you're asking for an all-inclusive price. End of the day, what is that number going to be, so you can fully plan for the pricing. I prepaid my funeral 20 years ago, but now I'm plus size. Will I fit my urn or cost more money to cremate? So, Susan, that is a really great question. It really depends on the crematory. Some crematories charge more over a certain size. Some do not. Some $350 is a common number, that if over $350, they may charge more. However, the new retort or crematory that are coming out are so efficient that the old way, I say old, but it's, the common way, where you have to use a colder machine if someone was over a certain size. You have to watch and, really pay attention and have a staff member kind of delegated to that cremation is not, the new way kind of going forward, because the machines are so smart that they'll back off the heat and they'll increase heat as they are gauging everything. Kind of with everything, machines are doing all the work that the humans used to do. So they're not always charging more. It is hard to say. You can take a 100-pound person and a 300-pound person, and they may yield the same amount of cremated remains because it's all based on bone structure. The tissue is all burned away, and it's what is that end result bone structure that makes the cremated remains. So it's not always based on weight that you get, maybe that you yield maybe more cremated remains than the other. So I wouldn't worry as much about that. If you don't fit in the urn, we have people who are 200 pounds who don't fit in a standard urn. So it's not really always based on that. If that's the case, then they'll ask your family what they want done with the remainder of the cremated remains. Maybe they do a keepsake urn or something like that. Hopefully there's no plan or you're not in ill health. And sometimes what happens is people, as they age, they lose weight. If they get sick, they lose weight. So weight can fluctuate a lot over the course of a lifetime. Are pacemakers removed before the body is brought to the funeral home or during embalming? They're not removed for a burial and embalming. They're removed only for cremation because they explode during the cremation process. But otherwise, they're buried with the person. We may have to turn them off in terms of, because when it goes through a cycle, they may send out a alarm if they're not getting the right feedback. So I think 2 or 3 times, I'm trying to think, we've been setting up for a viewing in the chapel, and all of a sudden the person's alarm on their monitor goes off, whether it was a pacemaker or not. I don't know quite for sure. I couldn't tell you, but scares the crap out of me when that does happen, because you don't expect some beeping alarm going off inside a body when you're not expecting it. But yeah, I start Mid-America College in Indiana. Oh yeah, that's exciting. So once you're a student, places will be more willing, Paige, to let you come in to observe, because you are then actually kind of under someone's tutelage that they can then say, that's why they are here in the preparation room with me. An argumentative essay for English comp between burial and cremation. That is like the broadest argumentative essay. I would truly narrow it down, Kayla, into maybe 3 key points or 2 key points. You could look at the environmental effects of both and argue on which is better for the environment. Cost-wise, for a funeral home, you could break down, but you're going to need to narrow like 1 or 2 key points that you are going to argue on, because it's way too broad and way too much discussion points to just generally delve in. No, Susan, they will not cut you in half. Retorts are large. You need to get to like 800 pounds plus to it be a concern of fitting into a retort. 350 pounds is by no means going to cause any issues when it comes to cremation. So please do not think that anybody is going to be cutting anything on you when you have passed. I don't want you to think that. Yes, question, Little Miss Funeral, little Lauren. Lauren has been so busy being a mom and working and life, so we have had a hard time connecting. Yes, there will be more coming. Yes, the casket is cremated for cremation. The person is cremated in whatever they're in. Extensions back in the hair. So I don't do the extensions. We would have to have somebody come in that knows how to do the extensions to do your hair. So we would have a hairdresser come in and and do your hair however you want, your family wanted your hair. So, we can really work with anything. Yeah, happy Thanksgiving, guys. Happy Thanksgiving tomorrow. I'm hosting tomorrow for the first time ever. I don't like to touch raw meat. Little known fact about me. It is so gross. I have this really large dead bird in my kitchen, and I don't know how I'm going to get it ready tomorrow. So pray for me because I have to prepare this bird tomorrow morning and put it in the roaster. And I'm a little concerned. I have gloves and stuff, but still so gross. I don't know why. I love eating meat more than, most all other food items, but I just hate touching it. Oh my goodness. Let's see what questions we got. What would cause an embalmed body to be a grayish color once in a casket? So there's a couple different reasons, actually. Just bad lighting and makeup can make the coloring look bad. But bodies can get a very ashen gray color. It can happen before death, that they just kind of turn that color from what they're ailing from. However, there are medications that can react with a body and with chemicals to cause some really weird discolorations. The problem is we don't know what people are on. There's no precursor science to some of that medication embalming fluid mixtures, because you then have to throw in the pH and the balance within the human body, and there's too many variables and there's too many things we just don't know when it comes time to do the embalming. So some of the medication can really come into play with the results. Also, over embalming can cause a grayish color. So too much fluid can turn a person like a really weird gray color as well. So there's a few different variables. Are their wishes honored, or are the wishes of the family? So, some states protect the person's wishes, that you can go and make your own arrangements and those need to be followed. In my state, in Michigan, that's not the case. You can go and prearrange a full burial funeral, and your family can go in and change it to cremation. Your next of kin has a legal right to say whatever is going to happen to you. And that's just how it is, unfortunately. You can put it in your will, and somebody can call an emergency court hearing to make sure that your will is implemented, but they may not carry it out. So make sure, if you don't trust that your family is going to follow through with what you want to do. Like in Michigan, we have a designation form, so I can take Joe Schmo from down the road to the funeral home, fill him in as my designated person to choose my disposition. And as long as I know Joe Schmo is going to pick what I want, he's in charge. It doesn't mean he's financially obligated. It just means he gets to dictate what is going to happen to me. So make sure you find somebody who is going to carry out your wishes and designate them. In a will doesn't work. Just on a piece of paper doesn't work. Power of attorney, executor doesn't work. Has to be the designation form through the funeral home. And then it's put on file, so that way they know whose orders to follow once you die. I know it seems crazy that you can't just say, I want to be cremated, and you're cremated. But once you're dead, you can't speak for yourself, and you can't sign your own authorizations. Now, some states you can. In some places you can. You can sign ahead and you can do it all ahead. But some states you cannot. So know your laws. As I've instructed before, know the laws of your state. Know the rules and the regulations and what you're entitled to and your rights, because only you can advocate for yourself. It's nice to want to turn around and blame the funeral director or blame this person or blame that person. But at the end of the day, if you didn't do research and look for information for yourself, it is your fault. It's nobody else's. It's yours. We're in a society of finger pointing and blaming. Take responsibility for your choices and your disposition if that's what you want to do, and make sure you know what you're entitled to. What's my favorite job task to do in the funeral home? Ooh, I guess it depends on the day. Some days I just like to help do the printing, or I like help processing the death certificates. Some days I really just like working in a prep room where I'm kind of by myself and it's quiet, or I might just really like doing cosmetics one day. Some days I want to meet with family, some days I don't. It takes a lot of mental focus and a lot of energy. Like this last week, I met with a good number of families, and I have been sick still. I can't kick whatever this is that's in my body now for like 4 weeks. So I'm cloudy and foggy. And I met with one family, and luckily they had a good sense of humor. I just was off. Like at one point I was writing and my pen just went flying across the room. I picked up another pen and kept going, and they just kept laughing at me. And, they were a great family to be a little off with, because they were so kind and lighthearted with me. But I don't like feeling that way. I like being really on point and really focused and really able to not fail a family. And I feel like when I'm not feeling the best and my head is cloudy, there's a chance of failure, and I don't like that. So it just depends on the day. You're welcome, Kari. I'm glad I can share with you guys and make you see that funeral director is not scary and not dishonest, hopefully, because I'm pretty bluntly honest about everything. David says, I found my aunt 4 years ago. She'd passed away and been gone for 5 days. The guy said that he couldn't embalm. Could she have been embalmed and viewed? So this is one of those situations. You could find someone after 5 days and then be so far gone, like you can't even recognize a part of them as your loved one, or they may look okay. There's too many variables for me to know if they could have embalmed or not. There are many embalmers who won't try with somebody who is decomposing because it's kind of gross sometimes, and you may not get very good results, and you may have to just hypodermically inject, and maybe the coloring is super bad. They're either green or black or browns or purging everywhere. But you can always attempt, you can always try, you can use lots of cosmetics and at least let the immediate family see the person. So, unless there's like skin slipping off their body everywhere and it's really a tragic case, I would try. And even if it was tragic and the family really, really insisted, I would still try. But it's hard for me to tell David in that situation because I wasn't there. I have no idea her condition. How do you guys deal with a stillborn baby? Oh, Tracy, I'm so sorry. So I'm not sure what you mean. How do we deal with a stillborn baby? So just like anyone, we would bring the person into our care and meet with you, see what you wanted done, whether you want to do burial or cremation, and we would facilitate. Some funeral homes do stillborn and babies at no charge, and they'll help you, find a cemetery, and they'll provide a casket. They may charge, it may be a smaller fee than typical, but you can do everything the same as a normal funeral for an adult, for someone who's lived. There's just no death certificate because there was no birth, but there is a fetal demise certificate that they can provide to you that will have information on it. But you can still do burial, and you can do an obituary if you want. You can do little bookmarks, you can do folders, you can do all sorts of things. If you want to do cremation, you can do kind of anything. So it's all still available. Just because the person didn't live ever doesn't mean that they were not alive in you, and that you loved them, and that they were special, and that they were somebody, that was important. So it's still a time to stop and reflect on that life that was lived inside of you, and just kind of commemorate what was. Do you have suggestions on how a family can get through the holidays after losing a loved one? Bobby, the first year or two, you just do what you feel like you need to do. I'm one for, reflecting on old traditions, but also starting new ones. I think it's really important to do that because family members you've lost held an important role during the holidays. Doing something in memory of them during that time is great, but you cannot get stuck in it. One thing that people, when they're suffering through grief, and I say suffering because the grief is overtaking them, then they are halted by it and they're not able to find any enjoyment out of the holidays or life or anything. And so in the holidays, set a table seat for that person or make their favorite dish, but also try and start a new tradition moving forward, something that is yours and your family's without that person involved. And it might be something that you do to commemorate that person each year. You maybe drink a bottle of their favorite wine every holiday because that was their favorite and it helps you remember them, but also have a new tradition while remembering them, or make their favorite pie, or just something. The first Christmas and holiday after my niece died, we just kind of muddled through and we did our own thing, and we still had our holidays, but they just looked a little different maybe. I was just telling somebody the other day that, we as a family have gone and got Christmas trees for my whole life, still. And we've gone for, I don't even know, 20 plus years to the same Christmas tree farm in a little town near us. And it's a family run Christmas tree farm, and they're amazing. And that's just something we've continued to do, is go there. The year my niece died, the only day we could all get together, we had been taking off so many days with work between the funeral and between the funeral here in Michigan and going and doing a memorial thing down in Ohio. And so we didn't have as much time to get together during that year during Thanksgiving. And so we called the Christmas tree farm, and their family came out to work on Thanksgiving Day to allow our family to come cut down our Christmas tree. And we'll never forget that. So that place is always special to us in a sad but really warm, memorable way. And so every year we keep continuing to go back there, and it's just what we do. So you don't have to break traditions because someone's gone, but they are going to change, definitely moving forward. But don't get stuck in the fact that all you think about is a loss that you had during the year, during the holidays, because you don't want that holiday then to always be commemorative of a death. So you've got to keep moving forward. It's just what you have to do in life. That's life. You can't stop with the death. Can felons join this field? I'm a retired military police officer that has a conviction for a weapons charge. Is ultimately committed. So when you go to mortuary school, they do run background checks on you. But it doesn't mean that you are not going to be allowed to be a funeral director. So they're going to look at the situation and what the charges were. Just like any field, they're going to, you have to provide your information of your felony, and so it's under discretion if they'll allow it or not. Things like weapons charges and such, we do have to look at, but we don't use weapons. So I don't know. I think it's a great question. But we definitely, background checks are run, and to go to school, they do look at your history. No, losing a pet is just, I don't even know if I'm still over the loss of my dog, and it was a year ago. People don't understand as much if they don't have that connection to somebody. But it's kind of the same losing a child. If you don't have a child, you don't get it. If you don't have that same connection to somebody, if you don't have a spouse, you don't understand losing a spouse. There's a lot of situations, if you're not in that same situation, they don't know. So yes, they can use discretion about your felonies. All right, I'm gonna have to just do one more, guys. How much is an actual take-home check of a funeral director? Oh, that's not a good one to answer here. Take-home check. So, like, how much revenue does a funeral home make per call? It's actually not as much as you think, because you have a huge overhead to run a business that is 24/7. So whether you get 10 calls a week or 0 calls a week, your building's still open, your lights are still on, you're still fully staffed, you're still taking calls 24/7 for that business, even if you make 0 income that week. So there's a huge overhead when it comes to a funeral home. And that's what a lot of people don't see. They think, why does it cost so much to do a funeral or to do a cremation or to do this, that, or the other? One is the huge overhead to run a business that needs to be available at the drop of a hat to any person when there is a loss. Second is there is a lot of stuff that you have to do for somebody when they've died behind the scenes. And most people, like I've said, 80% of what we do, you do not see. All the phone calls, all the paper running, all the small tasks, the breaking up of chairs, the setting down of chairs, the moving this, the moving that, transporting the flowers sometimes 6 times. All of those things are part of what we do, and that's part of the charges. If we listed them all out, yes, somebody would get it finally, maybe. But it's just so much, because then somebody would sit down and go, well, I don't need you to do this, or I don't need you to move a chair around, or I don't need you to clean a toilet, or I don't need you to do. It's just part of what a funeral home does to function and to run. We're not charging for things that you don't need, but we're charging for all the little things we have to do to make things happen. So there's no real number here I can give you. Because everybody's going to be different. Every call is going to be different. Ghost Jack said, no, the arms and legs are not cut, typically. Once in a while, they will open the back of the arms or the legs if there's trauma that they need to look at the tissue of. So, like, I've had somebody that was hit by a car and the whole back of the legs was opened, so they could look at the trauma there and look at the tissue. So, thank you guys so much. Joshua, one more. You're a cosmetologist, really want to become a funeral director. Huge jump. So nurses and cosmetologists ask a lot of questions to me about going into the business, because it seems like a pretty, simple transition over. So in Ohio, it's 2 different licenses. You can be a funeral director or you can be a funeral director and embalmer. You can't just do the embalming license. It's either the dual or the one. So if you want to do funeral director, it's basically you work an apprenticeship for a certain period of time and then take your test for your license. You don't go to college for the funeral director license. For the funeral director and embalmer, you need to do your prerequisites, go to mortuary school, do your apprenticeship, do all your licensing. So I would say, Joshua, great first step is call if you want to go to Cincinnati College of Mortuary Science. Give them a call over there. Ask them what classes you might still need. They can look at your transcripts from previous classes if you had other community college classes and see if anything transfers over. But they can then tell you when you'd start how much kind of classes you would still need and go from there. So make the call to them. But I would say you do need to go shadow at a funeral home, see what goes on behind the scenes. If you ever are interested in this and are making steps and need to get set up with a shadow, I can try to help set people up if you are interested, and show me that you are interested. So make sure you stay in touch if you're interested in going into the business. So thank you guys so much. Do have to say, last week I shot an awesome video. I did a great interview with Nidal, who is a young, amazing widow who lost her husband at an early age in her 30s. And she has her new blog, Beyond the Booty, and all about just kind of empowering women, and we're more than our bodies and everything. And so we dove in and talked about her loss and things that she wished she had known and things that she did for the funeral and stuff, and shortly after. And so we had a really great discussion. So I can't wait to share that video with you here soon in the next week or two. Have a great Thanksgiving tomorrow. Keep questions coming, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.